coverage right now. We're going to bring into the conversation with the Foundation for the Defense of Democracy, David Daoud, and he joins me to help us make sense of all of this. David, thanks for being with us. I know you and I have spoken about not only the Israel-Hamas conflict, but the nature of the threat of Iran. And I want to ask you first, because you and I have discussed this so many times, about at the outset of October 7th and in the wake of October 7th, every entity in this conflict was worried and concerned about spillover effects, regional escalation. That is what you heard time and time again over the last 6 months. Is that regional escalation here? Have we arrived at that point? What say you?
Thank you again for having me on. Look, I don't know if it's properly characterized as a regional escalation. This is now the first direct confrontation between Israel and Iran that has occurred in the course of their 40-plus year conflict. Iran has brought in its proxies, some of which are positioned in Yemen, some of which are positioned in Iraq and Lebanon. These are all extensions of Iran. So it's more proper to look at this as a conflict between Israel and Iran that has now moved into the direct phase, whereas it used to be between Israel and Iran's proxies. Because of Iran's positioning of its proxies throughout these countries, it will affect these countries. If Israel is going to need to respond to Hezbollah's attacks, which also coincided with the Iranian attack from Lebanon, Lebanon will have to bear a price. Both because Hezbollah is positioned in Lebanon and because the Lebanese government has done a lot to post facto adopt these Hezbollah attacks that have been occurring against Israel. So is it properly regional? I don't know, because a regional conflict suggests that this is a war that is going to drag in Syria and Jordan and Egypt and other sovereign nations. This is not the case.
So, David, let's just reiterate the point, because I think it's worth reiterating. Israel is no stranger to missile attacks against it from these Iranian proxy groups that border it: Hamas, Hezbollah, Palestinian Islamic Jihad. That's not what's happening here. This is Iran, thousands of miles to its east, that is carrying this out. That's why this is so unique, so specific and unorthodox, that Iran is striking at Israel solo. They are not using their proxies to do that. That is why this is so significant, right?
Well, yes and no. I mean, This was the first conventional attack, again, directly from Iran at Israel. This is no longer the shadow war that has gone on between the Israelis and the Iranians, where the Israelis have committed assassinations against Iranian officials within Iranian territory, and Iranians have retaliated against Israeli soft underbelly targets abroad. And Iran led this, right? Iran led this attack, but it was not exclusive to Iran. There were reports that the Houthis in Yemen fired drones and perhaps missiles at Israel. Hezbollah fired rockets coterminously with these attacks. Hamas seems to have sought this one out, right? The proxies in the Gaza Strip. I recall reading a report at the onset of this incident that the interlocutors between the Israelis and Hamas over hostage negotiations told Hamas to sit this one out. It seems like they sat this one out. But again, Hezbollah, Iran's star proxy, did participate. The bulk of the attack, the weight of the attack came from Iran, but the proxies did participate as well.
All right, you're just watching on replay. I believe one of these drones be intercepted. And it's so hard to tell, David, the target of some of these drones, these UAVs. Is it just going to be completely random? Are they going to be precise and targeted to military infrastructure, our civilian infrastructure? Is that going to be caught up in that as well? We just don't know, because a lot of these are just not here yet. They have not arrived because they take hours to get there, but there are hundreds coming. I think that is why this is so horrible in nature, the randomness of it.
And I'm glad you raised that. This is something the IRGC just released a statement claiming that this was a precise attack on the Israeli military infrastructure and bases. And from the statement, it seems like they've destroyed the entire IDF, right? This is obviously an exaggeration, but the precision of their attack is also an exaggeration. The means and methods that they used, be they cruise missiles, the drones, over the distance that they were fired, it's virtually impossible to guarantee that these will hit precise targets, be they military or civilian or otherwise, right? This is an indiscriminate attack on the state of Israel. This is an attack that so far we know has put a 10-year-old girl, Israeli girl, in life-threatening condition. As far as IDF spokesperson Daniel Hagari has said, Rear Admiral Hagari said, there's been light infrastructure damage to an Israeli military base in South Israel. Outside of that, as you heard, the attack is still considered ongoing by the IDF, so it's not finished. We don't know how this will all end. The interceptions of these rockets, if any of them are intercepted over Israel, the shrapnel, the damage that could cause to life and limb and property. But again, yes, I'm glad you raised this point, that this was in contrast, by the way, to the Israeli strike on the the Iranian consulate in Damascus. This was an indiscriminate strike. It wasn't a precision strike.
Right. David, that's why and how this has all been precipitated. April the 1st, and you can safely say, I think, Israel didn't come out and say it, but U.S. officials believe Israel carried out this very pinpoint strike on the Iranian consulate in Damascus in Syria, killing several high-ranking IRGC officials. And that is why Iran is doing this. They vowed to respond, they vowed to retaliate, and that's why you and I are talking right now. I want to talk, though, about Israel's capabilities in their defense structures. They have a lot of them. The Arrow, David's Sling, the Iron Dome, the Iron Beam. The worry is, and are you concerned by this, that all of those systems will be overwhelmed tonight. Are we seeing any evidence of that?
I don't think so far, right? The rockets that have been fired, the projectiles that have been fired, have not been fired in the quantities necessary to overwhelm any of these systems. I think mostly the systems that will intercept will be David Sling, which will deal with the intermediate missiles. It also has capabilities to deal with drones. Iron Dome will deal with some drones. The Israeli Air Force is up in force. Israel's international partners have helped with interceptions. As far as we know, the United States, the United Kingdom participated in interceptions reportedly over Iraq and Syria. We've seen reports of interceptions and strikes in Yemen. There were reports that the Jordanians were intercepting projectiles, be they drones or the missiles that pass through their territory. Again, at the end of the day, the Israel Air Force is a highly capable force. Its aerial defense systems, again, they're not impregnable. But the quantities necessary to penetrate them have not been fired by Iran. And I think, by the way, that may have been intentional. It needs to be stressed that what this attack demonstrates so far, because again, the incident isn't finished, but that Iran is largely a paper tiger. I've been sitting here half joking that the Ayatollah Khamenei is praying that Iron Dome works very well. Because I don't think that they want to cause the type of damage that their threats suggest they are causing, because they know, as they admit in their most sober moments, that Israel is not the weak force that they claim it to be, and they are not the strong conventional force. Israel could target Iran back and make it a very painful strike, and I think they want to avoid that.
David, just lastly, I mean, this is what I can't wrap my head around. The signals and the advance warning of this attack had been kind of posted all throughout the week. We knew this was coming. We knew when this was coming. And the fact, we heard from President Biden on Friday, he was asked about this. He said, don't, to Iran. And so you have to wonder whether that deterrence failed. But on the flip side of that, whether, Iran has this kind of weird mentality at play where they are launching this, yet they, to your point, realize it's not going to have the effect that they intend. And so you have to wonder what the whole point of it is. It just seems like, to your point, that this is weak retaliation on Iran's part for something. Are they just trying to send a message that they can do something, that they weren't going to stand by, that they had to react in some way? And is this what we're seeing as a result?
Look, I'm a martial artist in some of my free time, and one thing you learn is that you don't telegraph a strike, be it a kick or a punch, right? You don't sit there and show your opponent in advance that you're going to strike. It puts them on notice. It puts them on guard. This is precisely what Iran has done now for, what has it been, over 10 days. This, as Rear Admiral Hagari said, the IDF has been ready for this. And I think this was part of kind of this theatricality that Iran was doing, because they didn't want the damage to be commensurate with the threats that they're issuing. Yeah. If you ask me, this is mostly for domestic consumption. Oh. The Israelis killed a senior IRGC official. He has been critical since 1998, and not just Iran's, but its proxies' expansion in the region, both in Syria and Lebanon and the Palestinian territories and Israel. Right, Mohammad Reza Zahedi was not an insignificant figure. Okay. And Israel killed him in a very public way. Right. Iran had to show to its own audience, right, and to the resistance axis's audience generally, that it is not weak. And I think this is largely what this was meant to do, rather than, have the impact that their threats suggested.
All right, David Daoud, we have to leave it at that. We do appreciate your time on this Saturday night. Thanks again.
Thank you so much for having me on.
All right, in the meantime.